Welcome back to Granja Caimito in the Pedroche Valley of Andalusia, Spain. The temperatures are rising and we have started to harvest vetiver in order to plant it in more places. And then there is our experiment with the duckweed that won't multiply. The container to the right contains chicken manure and water, and that was too strong for the duckweed. The bucket on the left contains what is left in just water, and it won't move either. Maybe it's not duckweed. Maybe they sold us something different. Because of all the rampant growth, it was time for some maintenance in our wannabe food forest. And instead of using a machine or cutting it by hand with a scythe or a machete or another tool, we decided to employ our sheep for the task. So the guys were setting up this mesh, this net, and then they are bringing in the sheep to assign them their task. Unfortunately, making our flock of sheep go where we want them to go to is a little bit more challenging than it should be. It's because they're mostly left alone and kind of, wild animals. A little while ago I said we wanted to put them into the freezer, but at the moment I'm thankful that we still have them, because now they can do the maintenance job. It takes a few minutes, but eventually they end up where we want them to be at. Unfortunately, these sheep are always very confused about where to run to. I am standing here filming and at the same time blocking the only other exit. Now imagine the same with a much larger flock of, let's say, 100 or even 200 animals. It would be pure chaos. And that is why we don't want to have a lot of sheep at the moment. Eventually, yes. But first we need to have other type of fencing. And fencing for small ruminants is the same type of fencing as for pigs in the system as I envisioned it. So it will come and then we will work more with them. The same way as with the cattle, we also try to bunch them up, which is a little bit harder with just 6 animals. But this net does the job, and I will show you now over the next few days how this area changed. Let's go up in the air and have a look at this from above. By the way, The audio is fake. Drones don't capture sound. This is the audio from another clip. It's a little bit more interesting, I think. The sheep are a little bit scared because the dogs are playing just across from the animal lane. However, the sheep are figuring out that the dogs won't come close. Looks like the female dog, Nummer 8, wanted to practice a wrestling move. The dogs make a lot of noise jumping around on the forage. Every time the dogs are very active, the sheep go into hiding. Let's see how this experiment goes. They have been in here now roughly 24 hours. They like to huddle up there in the corner because on the other side there are the dogs. They're not doing anything, but it is enough that they are present. But after a little while, they come out when the coast is clear. And what we can see is that they have been eating and trampling. And that is what I expected. The idea is to clean up this area a little bit so that the vetiver plants that are also in there, but they are mostly there where the fences, can then emerge better, because this other stuff grows with the lower temperatures and the vetiver needs higher temperatures, so it's lagging behind. But because of all the other vegetation, it will not get sunlight and therefore will then not grow. So that is an attempt, an experiment, to use these animals to help us along instead of doing this manually. And the intention is to repeat this in many other areas. So I can see that we are going to have a larger flock of sheep at some point, but that requires the right type of fencing so that we can manage them. I believe this is pretty good. They don't have to eat it. It's enough that they trample it and cut it with their hooves. So these sheep are doing a good job in here. It doesn't have to be that they eat everything and turn it into manure. I think trampling and cutting it and creating some impact is all it takes. This is the whole job site. You can see to the left the fence for the sheep, that red line, and on the right side you can see where we had the horses before. As the trees are making leaves now, we don't want the horses near them. It is better to work with a smaller animal that can't reach up. Let's go and have a look at the upper part of B1 where we have the Paulownia trees. The horses have been here some 30 days ago, and the growth of the grasses is very nice. There's also a lot of mustard and all kinds of other plants. The clumps are areas where the horses have manured, and so these pieces are more nutrient rich than the rest of the area, and therefore the plants there go stronger. At some point this year we will have a lot of chickens in this area to get started with that project. And then I believe the nutrients will be scattered all across this area and more distributed than with the horses. But the horses will definitely also come back in here, but not our herd of bovines. Cows and bulls just trample everything what is in their way to the ground. Speaking about the cows and bulls, let's go and find out where they are. Ah, here they are. Some of them are already resting to process the ingested grass. That is good. Soon they will leave and look for greener pastures in another paddock. The next day, while the cattle are grazing in the adjacent paddock, this one here gets set up for strip grazing to get the mob effect. A10 is about 6,300 square meters in size and much larger than would be right for the herd size we currently have. We get a good mob impact when grazing just 1,000 square meters at a time. This right here is an interesting observation. This is the place where one of the cows had difficulties and the uterus came out, and of course there were some drops of blood and all that. And now this time that they were here grazing, they made sure to somehow cover it all with their manure. I would assume that's some sort of an instinct to avoid predators coming into the area. This is the adjacent paddock where they are now. Let's see how this looks like from above. The area we just overflew has seen pigs rooting up everything multiple times. Then it came back, and we put the cattle there, and now this spring it is truly productive. Let's check out the neighbor who tilled and seeded. Not exactly the same, isn't it? Let's go and check out another area where the pigs also worked. As you might remember from previous videos, this was pretty much void of any plants shortly after we moved the pigs in. Then the rain came and the temperatures rose a bit, and suddenly we saw a lot of new grass and other forage plants show up. After a while we let the cattle graze, and now it is looking like that. The mules who have been tilling the adjacent area CT2 will be back shortly to bury the seeds we ordered, and then we will also take them in there to till and seed some of the empty spots, while we also create some structure with lanes and manageable areas in CT1. In the left turn you will now see a lot of wetness. I'm not sure if that's just from the rain or also an effect of the swale above. The area used to be wet after every major rain event. It might just be that it is not draining well. Soon there will be plants taking advantage of that moisture. We do have an abundance of forage now, even here in this animal lane, which is pretty compacted. The stuff really grows tall because of the additional nutrients that the animals have deposited. So I think. And here you can see what it is. There's a lot of clover in there. And this is pretty much what is all over the place. This is now inside B1, where we had the horses a short while ago. It's pretty much the same as outside, but in here we have a few grasses that we don't have outside. This was also done today. So the idea is to clean up a little bit the area around the Paulownia trees, so that they get sunlight and can re-emerge like this one here. We would have lost them without this activity. So they are trying to grow, but of course if they are being shaded out by all the other stuff around, let me zoom out and pan, you see all this would definitely make it harder or almost impossible to grow for a tree that is like that. They grow fast, but still they need everything that all the other plants also need, and sunlight is one of them. Those trees are from last year, so we definitely don't want to lose them, but they had not had a lot of chance to grow, so hopefully this time they can then grow as tall as the other ones that are around here. This one looks a little bit sad, but it is green, so I expect that this will also emerge. This might be gone. Just to give you an impression, this is how tall it is. This particular patch here in this corner is what the horses declared as the toilet. That is then the result. Some of them decided to start again from below. Doesn't really matter, at least not in our case. They are here for shade and for biomass, not for timber, but for timber that probably would be bad. The problem here in this area is the wind, the cold wind that comes from that mountain range there. This is basically north, so north is right there, and that cold wind makes these Paulownia trees start later and lose their leaves earlier than the others that are in a more protected area. So now I have this crazy idea that I want to order a bunch of new Paulownia trees and plant them right there in front of that stone wall. So that stone wall should protect them from the wind while they are young, and the wall is facing south, so it will also reflect the sun. And I want to plant them very dense, so every 50 centimeters a tree. And then another row, so that they also are at 50 centimeters distance to each other, but the two rows intersect with each other. So basically we have a tree every 25 centimeters. When they are very small, that might help. And later we have to thin it out, but by then we can select the strongest ones and leave them and remove the weaks. So that way we get a hedge. And then maybe this area is more protected, and now the very same tree species can grow better in here. So at least that is what I hope for. We will give it a try, and we will also use our excavator to loosen up the soil, because that was the other problem that we had here. They were dying because of too much moisture accumulating in the little hole, and so we loosen up the soil, maybe a meter 50 deep, just do a little bit of chaos, and then plant them in that loose soil. The same way like we did in the other area where the excavator created the berm. And there they are growing very well. This guy here used to be the tallest one of the bunch, and he is coming back in the upper parts of the trunk and not like the others at the very low end. Well, these guys are also out and active, and it's a lot. So it's good that we are making some motions to get some chickens here. This here is not a rabbit hole. This is a dog hole. They also like to do this. And it's pretty big. But I don't want them to continue, because on top there is something very important. So this is some mob grazing going on here. It goes a little bit slow because there's so much forage, but at least it is working, and the whole day is rainy, so that is why the guys are looking on with some protection. That was it for today. I hope you find it interesting. I will leave you with some images of our mob grazing and come back in a few days where I will then tell you how our sheep maintenance job will continue.
Deja. Deja más. Vale, un poco más y ya está. Vale, ahí.